We are the largest marketplace for co-living right now in the U.S. We've got over 33,000 units across 40 states, and anyone anywhere can leverage the tools that we offer. The concept for me was really how do you access and create a business around the most underserved community with the highest need, that in my personal view is really like the most deserving, right? I mean, this whole American dream of pick yourself up by your bootstraps and like go get a job and grind and you can make it. And unfortunately, over the course of my career, I realized like that just wasn't really true in a lot of cases.
Welcome to Housing Matters, the podcast that covers everything real estate, from buying your first home to building your investment portfolio. Hosted by me, Matt Pouliot, Pouliot Real Estate. Each episode brings expert insights, smart strategies, and real talk on housing and affordability. If it's about real estate, it matters here. I'm thrilled to have joining us today on this episode, Atticus LeBlanc, who is an entrepreneur that founded PadSplit in 2017. This is a public benefit corporation focused on expanding affordable housing through shared co-living model. PadSplit is designed to help address housing affordability challenges by creating private rental rooms in shared homes, aligning the interests of property owners, cities, and renters. The platform operates without government subsidies, and it's generated significant financial impact, including over $150 million in renter savings and more than $5 billion in taxpayer savings. He also serves as a co-founder and co-managing partner of Striant Investments and Striant Construction, which specialize in unique real estate investments and the adaptive reuse of historic buildings. Before PadSplit, Atticus worked for over a decade as an affordable housing developer and contractor, growing his real estate work from $10,000 in savings to over $100 million in assets. Atticus, I'm really thrilled that you've carved out some time to be with us today on Housing Matters.
Thank you for having me, Matt. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So Atticus and I met through an organization called the Housing Innovation Alliance. This is a group really focused about bringing more innovative solutions into the housing and creation space. And but Atticus, I want folks who don't know you to learn a little bit more about you. Your career has really been focused on working in real estate and housing, with a focus really more so on accessibility and affordability. Can you walk us through your background that led you to specifically focusing on this area?
I think it's certainly been colorful and somewhat unique, but I actually started as a very low-paid real estate financial consultant before I realized that there was no way I could sit in a cube for 10, 12 hours a day, and then worked for a gas station convenience store company, which is what everyone aspires to. And it was right.
Top of every career list in America, gas station operator.
My little brother used to give me a hard time that I went to an Ivy League school so I could go pump gas, and he wasn't entirely wrong, but it was a really great educational experience. I think there are many real estate industries, apartments being one of them, gas convenience stores being another, where it's like, it's really a business disguised as real estate, and real estate's obviously a huge part of it, but there's all this other stuff happening operationally behind the scenes. And so it was a great way to cut my teeth, and then left that role and became a commercial real estate broker on the land side, which was very similar work to what I had been doing while there, but was at the very front end of the financial crisis in 2007. My first son was born. My wife told me she wanted to stop working. She was working for the UN at the time, doing international HIV prevention. And she wanted to take care of the baby. And then I was like, yeah, this is fine. I'm totally stable. And then like within 3 weeks, every one of my deals fell apart. So it came back to housing. And I had, yeah, exactly.
Well, I
had and really gone back to my roots. When I moved to Atlanta, I rented a room off of Craigslist, and 6 months later was looking at apartments. I was like, man, I can buy a house for cheaper than I can rent an apartment. When the lease was up for renting that room, and because I bought that house just on a whim, like I had savings and equity built up in that home. So fast forward to 2007, 5 years later, and I was like, gosh, I really need to do something, and nobody's hiring right now. My pipeline is zero. Let me go look at what if I can buy another house, and maybe I don't have to rely on other people to be able to just make do for my wife and my young son. And houses were under $50,000 and absolutely should not have been, and no one could tell me why. So started buying homes at that time, and was doing housing choice vouchers to fill those homes. And then lo and behold, in 2009, ran into, like, I got to know these neighborhoods really, really well, and got to see a situation where, like, people were renting rooms in a house that was next door to my first ever vacancy. And it was a terrible house that they were living in, tarp on the roof, wires hanging off the side, no heating and air conditioning. And I'm here in Atlanta. So, like, it gets both hot and cold here. And this guy, Mitch, who I'd gotten to know in that house, had said, hey, our house is getting foreclosed. Can we come rent rooms in your house? And that was really the start of the experimentation for me. Simultaneously, we were still buying other houses, because you got to buy a lot of houses to replace two incomes. And then started buying apartments, and then just small boutique commercial stuff, and ended up in some shopping center rehabs. There was an old 1912 school building that we saw as another opportunity that we converted into affordable housing and commercial later. So yeah, there was all sorts of stuff happening. And then over that same period of time, I started a construction company, because when the larger buyers started purchasing homes, it became harder and harder for us to do it. So we started taking the labor that we had kind of collected over the period that was twiddling their thumbs, and said, okay, well, why don't we use them to go work for other people as well? So I was running both of those businesses, and then started selling some of the apartments in 2014, 15, 16, and was not in dire straits anymore financially. And so just started thinking about, hey, how do I ultimately leave a legacy for good in the world, and just create some positive impact that will be sustainable and last for generations. And so that's when I went back to this idea of, hey, it worked for this guy Mitch and his buddy Otis, who had rented rooms in that house, and how could you take this model and really make it scale?
So you were spending a lot of time and effort leading up to the start of the platform, PadSplit, and working in the space, but also probably dealing with some of the same frustrations I deal with on the real estate brokerage side, and that it's transactional, and then it's done, and like there's not really a whole lot of the ability to keep replicating it, because it's a function of, okay, is there a deal available? Yeah, we're going to rehab it. Or could we maybe build a development project? But you focus a lot of time on that one specific site, and then the next site is different. So it sounds like you stepped back from the transactional world and really entered into what I would call the transformational world, in which you created a platform that other people can utilize to solve a social issue.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair. I think, I mean, I shifted pretty quickly from the transactional world into the rental income world, and recognizing that if I can just replace my income, if I could replace my income and my wife's income, then I wouldn't have to worry about the next transaction. And so that was a pretty significant mindset shift, especially coming from a brokerage background, and it was just way easier to live. Right? I mean, I wasn't making a ton of money through, certainly in the early years, those rentals. We were just pouring all the equity that we were earning back into those homes, or to buying new homes, and then just ultimately thinking that my future self will need cash flow, and to just kind of let that engine run. So that was really the mindset. And then shifting gears to PadSplit, it was like, hey, this works, right? This works, and this strategy works. And I know that there were a lot of other, not even real estate investors necessarily, but just individuals that were interested in real estate, that I think the same idea would really appeal to, right? How would you like to have the financial independence to leave your job if you wanted to know that, like, you're not dependent on someone else for your next paycheck, whether it was from a commission or from a W-2. And so really just thinking about how do you align the incentives between real estate practitioners or hopefuls with that are ultimately driven by better returns that are consistent and reliable, predictable, and then align those incentives with people who need access to rental properties that just don't have it. And that was really kind of the real shift in mindset that I hadn't seen done previously.
Yeah. And before we dig into PadSplit, because I want to spend some time on that, I want to just double click on this piece about you moved from broker transactional to owning real estate. And I think that there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast and people who would consider themselves to be a real estate broker, but that are not unpacking the world of owning real estate themselves as a vehicle to build wealth. And oftentimes some of these people are closest to opportunities that would be a great way for them to, not only build their wealth, but be a good landlord for somebody, take over a building, be a good, steward of that resource. I'm curious to those listening who might find themselves in that category, kind of what I mean, it sounds to me that it was like an aha moment that you had, that I need to replace my income from a cash flow perspective with revenues that are coming from buildings. But it seems like a lot of times people struggle with seeing how it is that they're going to actually get that. Do you mind talking a little bit more about how that might work for somebody that's more in that
beans and rice is the short answer, right? I mean, it's not an easy transition, but I was forced into it. I'll tell you though, there's a really important lesson, even from the gas convenience store company that I worked for early in my career. I ultimately left over a non-compete agreement. It was totally unfair non-compete agreement that said you couldn't work for anyone who was related to anyone, who ever consulted with anyone, who was nth degrees of separation from a gas convenience store. And this was every grocery store, every home improvement store. It was literally every business out there. I was like, how can I ever sign this? And they were giving us $500 to do it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. There's no way I can ever get a job. If I want to work for a real estate developer at some point in my career, no one's ever going to hire me with this. And other people in the company wanted to leave over the agreement, but no one did. The reason why I was able to is because I had one, a wife who was working, and B, really, really low cost of living. The car I was driving at the time cost me $2,600 cash. So I had no car payment. My house payment, I bought a foreclosure that I'd fixed up that I was living in with my wife. And our mortgage payment was $730 a month. And so I think it starts earlier on, Matt, in that it's not this question of how do I transition from a transactional way of life to this recurring revenue stream, which is smaller. It's you start with cut your bills, right? And the more you can cut your bills, the more flexibility that gives you. And that's a mindset shift that's largely independent. Now for me, I still, because I had no income in late 2007, early 2008. So I took 2 contract jobs while I was building out this book of business and purchasing homes. I had structured the deals with other people who were putting in money that I got paid some incremental upfront fees for finding the home or renovating the home. But it was just scratch and claw, and you were absolutely living on a pretty extreme budget, anticipating that, well, I know that this asset that I'm investing in has equity, and that it is covering cash flow, generating positive cash flow every month. And so over time, if I can just keep doing this for 5 years, then I'll really have something at the end of it. And that was key.
Yeah. That's an important part, I think, that you mentioned, and that I think a lot of times what happens, particularly among real estate brokers, the ones that are successful, you build up a certain lifestyle, and that it comes with expenses, and then people are not willing to sacrifice for a short period of time, not having all of
Yep.
those extra things in order to build longer term wealth. It's like I could go buy a boat tomorrow, but I don't. I'd rather buy
Yeah.
another apartment building, you know? It's not as sexy. Like, I guess I could put a sign out front that says my boat, but like that is going to generate cash flow, which if there's enough of it, then you can go use that money to buy the boat. It's kind of like the old Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad thing. And I feel like there are many people also, and maybe this is where PadSplit can come in to help people, who just don't think outside the box about how they can generate revenue from this roof. Like if you buy a 4-unit building and you don't live in any of the units and you fill them all up, you now kind of have 4 people that are working for you. I mean, they're not on your W-2 payroll, but each month they're writing a check and that's putting the principal down and so forth. But I feel like that there's a lot in the real estate community that spend a lot of time on how can I sell more real estate, and not as much time on like, what am I doing to invest or encourage other people to invest, because you need to be able to show them like how they can make it work economically. And so, and I think what we're obviously in a different time. Like, yeah, my first mortgage was $413 a month. You know, those days are gone. So like, how do people now in 2026 with the current economics that we have do this, you know? And maybe we can look at that through the lens of PadSplit. You know, it's grown into one of the largest co-living marketplaces in the US, focused on serving really workforce housing needs. We just wrapped up a podcast recording with Chris Muller, who's looking at pathway communities to help teachers and firefighters. So how does PadSplit fit into the mix?
Yeah, so we are the largest marketplace for co-living right now in the U.S. We've got over 33,000 units across 40 states, and anyone anywhere can leverage the tools that we offer. The concept for me was really, how do you access and create a business around the most underserved community with the highest need? That in my personal view is really like the most deserving, right? I mean, this whole American dream of pick yourself up by your bootstraps and like go get a job and grind and you can make it. And unfortunately, over the course of my career, I realized like that just wasn't really true in a lot of cases. And so with PadSplit, like, one, we're talking about the 50% of American renters who can't afford their rent. And just to kind of put it in perspective for listeners, especially real estate investors, 1/3 of the entire rental population in the United States are either 1 or 2 person households that also earn less than $35,000 a year. At 1/3, okay? It's a massive population, and that 35,000 number is relevant because it means that the max they're going to qualify for in a traditional apartment under like a 3-to-1 income to rent ratio is $873. Well, that just doesn't exist in most American cities. And so the point is, like, you have a really captive audience in that group of people. And in addition, it's also, like, in my opinion, the right thing to do. So that's like, I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. And PadSplit was built to address that problem, right? I mean, our mission, and you mentioned we're a public benefits corporation. Our mission is to help solve the affordable housing crisis one room at a time, while leveraging housing as a vehicle for financial empowerment. And so we really focus on, call it sub 80% AMI renters. And like, that is the problem that we want to solve, is to make sure that if you have a job or an income, wherever you happen to be in America, that you have the capacity to rent a respectable home, and that you have the power to live in that home, to have economic mobility if you have a different opportunity, whether it's across town or across the country. Like, and our marketplace was really built to create that type of power for this workforce community. And the way that we do that is by ultimately demonstrating for those real estate investors, hey, here's a way that you can actually earn more income. And so if you are a prospective real estate investor today, like, I recommend PadSplit today, of course, but long before PadSplit, I was still recommending this strategy. It just happened to be way more operationally intensive. And you can still do this today on your own. It's just way more operationally intensive. And what I mean by that is, like, PadSplit solves this layer of services that are generally pretty complex, and and we do the things that specifically most owners, investors, real estate professionals cannot do on their own, right? And those are the limited things that we focus on. So filling rooms really quickly is probably the biggest one. We spend about $2 million a month in marketing alone, just to get those units filled. The process for booking those units is no showing. They create a profile. Their identity is verified through biometric scans. They do background screening. They do income verification where we tie into their bank account if they have one, and they can move in. They book a room just like on Airbnb, and they move in within the next 24 to 48 hours in most cases. So like really fast. Our average time to refill a room is 8 days. So pretty blazingly fast by any measure. Then we collect all the payments for those residents, because if you have 6 people in a home and they're all on different pay schedules, it becomes really difficult to track all those payments, especially if they're paying weekly. And then we deal with a lot of the other stuff. At least we're the first point in triage for Johnny stole my peanut butter, Susie's playing your music too loud, all of those types of things. So
sign me up to handle the Johnny's.
Hey,
ate my peanut butter.
We're hiring customer service agents right now, Matt. So
I'm sure you're right out straight. This has really brought to bear a number of questions that I think other people listening might have, which is, first, at a high level, just talking about another organization that people are maybe familiar with, Airbnb. How does PadSplit differ?
I'd say there's a pretty significant difference. The first thing is like Airbnb is transactional. Like you typically pay at the very beginning of the transaction, and the entire platform is built around like an individual stay. For PadSplit, we're built around an ongoing relationship with that resident. So like we have a network of options. So a resident can transfer from one unit to another. And we know that about a third of our users will transfer at some point during their time with us. But like so the way that the systems are built is really different. And just like think about ratings, for instance. When you rate your Airbnb, like you're rating a very set amount of time that you had an experience in that home. Well, for PadSplit, your move-in rating could be very different than your whole house rating. And the way that you feel about that house on day 7 is probably different than you feel about it on day 33 versus day 165 versus day 382. And like you have to figure out a way to create transparency within the marketplace and to manage the relationship between the host and the resident member, in our case, to understand like, is this a good host? Is this a good member? Like what's actually happening here? And how do we resolve any of the friction that happens inside that home? So that's like technically, I think probably the biggest distinction. For all intents and purposes, when most people really get it is when I say the average cost of a nightly stay, if you're going to look at nightly stay in PadSplit, is under $30. So it's just they're built very differently, but the costs themselves show up very, very differently as well.
So I'm just listening to this and I'm thinking, all right, I could buy a 6-bedroom home in Maine, farmhouse, for like $300,000 and then rent out each one of the rooms with PadSplit as an example, probably make a pretty decent return as the owner of that asset. But more importantly, would give people in that market an opportunity to get something for maybe, I'm just picking numbers, like $500 a month, which there's literally 0 options on the market for that. So if they only have a housing allowance of $5 a month, they're living on someone's couch or they're in one of these. So, but the regulatory environment for like second homes in a lot of communities seems to be anti what's called short-term rentals, but this is like a longer-term rental with the support of an organization, PadSplit, who can help with placement of tenants and all the kind of things that are, I think, from a landlord perspective, are the reason why people don't do more shared co-housing arrangements, because you're trying to spin too many
Yeah.
plates to deal with all the different
exactly. I
people
mean,
coming
and
going.
what we've proven out, if nothing else, is that we make it much easier for someone to scale this into a viable business where they can literally replace their entire income, whether they buy, a handful of houses or 100 or more, and the tools can work at multiple levels. But at its core, and to get back to your earlier question, like, well, how does someone do this today when mortgages are so much higher? Like, we have lots of examples right now of hosts who, I mean, one guy I can think of was earning less than $60,000 a year, and the way that he ultimately did this was he bought a house for himself he was using a VA mortgage and rented out 4 rooms, and then he was working as a marketing agent, and then a year later he did it again. He bought another house, moved into that one, and then rented out 5 rooms, and including the additional one that he had been staying in at the old house. And so then a year later, he moved he moved out and bought a live workplace, right? And so it's not, and like, that is this market right now, like with interest rates what they are. And
but I want to pause on that for a second. The reason, so this happens a lot with real estate agents. They're like, I got to help this person buy a house. They have to sell their house first. Sounds like with pad split, if somebody were in a situation where they could demonstrate to the bank that there's like a debt coverage ratio of 1.25 or something with this asset that they're leaving, and oh, by the way, it's going to be like managed through this platform, the average 8-day fill rate, I don't really think I'm going to have vacancy, but I'll bake in 5%. Like, just keep this on my balance sheet as an asset that I own that's being paid for by the tenants that are in it. So I qualify for a new mortgage, totally irrespective.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in that case, he had, from that one house, I think it was $15,000 a year in free cash flow from his first house. And that was, he was living, right? And so then, when you go back to the mortgage underwriter for house number 2, and you're like, okay, well, yeah, my income's no longer $60,000 a year; it's $75,000 a year. Like, that's huge. That's significant.
I think, unfortunately, like, the only thing that we as Americans would need to get beyond for this to not be more ubiquitously used is like the desire that most people have to just not have other people around them, like, as a human way. But for people that are like, hey, I don't mind, like, that I'd rather own this home and live with 4 other people than not own the home. Like, they're probably the number one avatar of somebody that's going to be living in it. But I can also see this, and it sounds like you guys have people that don't live in the homes at all.
Correct.
They just use the platform, and it's
it's the majority, right? But I mean, you look at this guy, and did he want to have roommates? No, he didn't. But you know what? Like, this kind of goes back to my early story as well, and that I was making sacrifices, and he was making sacrifices because, like, you believe that you have this goal that you want to achieve, and so you make the sacrifices knowingly that by doing so, you're going to end up in a better place, and your future self will thank you for those sacrifices that you made while you could make them. And I don't look at this any differently.
No, I agree with you. I mean, like, the Northeast is full of buildings that are like tri-deckers or 4-deckers, and people lived and raised their family in one unit and rented the other ones out. It was the only way they could actually do it. But you focus more on rooms as opposed to whole units as an approach to doing this. So I have kind of like 2 questions. One, the first question that I think reaches a broader audience is, can somebody who was denied for a loan use pad split and like some math equation to go to a lender and get qualified for a loan? Or do they have to wait until they're in there and that it's kind of mature?
Yeah, so
that would be my first
this
question.
Is like, I don't know. I don't think this is common knowledge for most people, but I can tell you my own story. Like, I didn't qualify for my own mortgage. Like, and maybe still wouldn't, right? I mean, the only mortgage I ever qualified for traditionally was when I bought my first house in 2003. And it's
Wow.
actually a lot easier for someone to buy and get a mortgage on an investment property in most cases than it is to get a traditional home mortgage, right?
Yeah. Because the bank can see where their money's going to come from. It's going to come from the tenants, and you've got a vacancy rate of 0
or you're not
in your
using a bank,
community.
right? Or they're
True.
looking at it as a commercial mortgage, right? If you're doing like anybody on the street basically could find a hard money loan or private capital somewhere to go buy a deal, right? The question is, like, is it a real opportunity? Because the money always follows the opportunity, and I've seen this happen a lot of times where people I mean, until pad split, really, like, I didn't have any significant W-2 income for 20 years. and so, like, there was nothing that I could go to a Rocket Mortgage with, and like my tax return, which was literally like 2.5 inches thick, and they just looked at me like I was crazy, right? But if I show up to the local real estate investment committee meeting, usually Real Estate Investors Association, and I'm like, hey, I have this property under contract that is valued at $300,000, and I'm under contract at $175. Is anybody interested? I can assure you, you'd see a lot of hands go up, right?
Oh yeah.
Then and so, like, that's kind of it's a mindset shift for most people who think very traditionally about, oh, well, I can't go get a mortgage for this $1 million property because I'm only earning $75,000 a year. Well, sure you can. Like, you're not talking to the right people. And the question is, like, is that $1 million property worth $1.5 million or $2 million? Or like whatever the numbers are that you want to pick. Like, there are absolutely people who will make those commercial mortgages in a lot of cases. They're just underwriting differently than what you would on a traditional home mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, to unpack that a little bit, I talked to a guy and he's like, "Oh, I can only qualify for a $200,000 home." And so I said to him, "I'm like, are you okay with living in a unit in a building as opposed to a whole home?" He's like, "Oh yeah, man, no problem at all." I'm like, "Okay, go back to the same lender and ask him if you can buy a $400,000 4-unit building where you're going to live in one unit and you're going to have a roommate, and then the rest of them you're going to rent out." And he's like, "God, you wouldn't believe it. They approved me for this $400,000 property. I couldn't even buy a 200 before." I'm like, "Yeah, because you're getting $4,500 a month in rent from the people that are there. That's going to go, and they'll pull like 70% of that toward your approval." So to me, like, pad split offers an opportunity for people to do that without buying an apartment.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, one of my teachers would always say, "Oh, well, go buy a duplex or a quadplex, live in one unit, rent out the others." Well, the reality is there just aren't a lot of duplexes and quadplexes in most cities, but there are a ton of extra empty bedrooms and wasted space, and there's really nothing precluding you from, like, or precluding the rental of those individual units at this point. And that's part of what we wanted to bring, was just to say that space has real value, and we can link the demand for that bedroom to your bedroom in your property.
Outside the box thinking, within the box. I love it. So really what you're turning the traditional model on its head in terms of thinking about housing as a unit and really focusing on rooms that are in a home. A lot of times, in America, we've grown from average house size 950 up to over 2,000, and now there's kind of a day of reckoning. Maybe if more people used pad split, you'd see more 2,500 square foot 5-bedroom homes built, because they're going to rent out a couple of them. I don't know. But, like, to me, I'm wondering, like, always, how do we get the average person to maybe adopt using this, and what would that kind of look like? And I'm curious if you want to talk about that a little bit. Let's just say I'm Matt Pouliot, I'm a hand raiser. I'm in Maine. I want to use pad split. Like, how would I use it? And also, I know you mentioned this story about the guy with the VA loan and stuff, but for someone whom is more in line with the person I just described,
Sure.
that is just looking at single family and then multi, could they open up their search for more expensive single family homes and then use, hey, I'm going to pad split a couple of these units? Do you have experience with people doing that?
I think our value prop is based on asking some really simple questions, and like I was not confident that enough people would raise their hands to say that yes, I want to live with strangers in my home, right? Like, and I asked this question at the Supply Summit where we met, and like 500 people in that room, and 2 hands go up when I ask, hey, who wants to live with a stranger in their home? And if you change the question to who wants to earn a better return on their investment, like everybody's hand goes up, right? Who wants to make more money,
right?
And so the premise, and we haven't really talked about it here, is like the first thing is it has to make more money, and if I can show this guy who's looking at the 4-unit building or whomever it is, do you actually want to earn more money? And oh, by the way, here is how creating more affordable, more easily accessible housing can actually earn you more money, then you're much more likely to do it. And so that's the key that I think is that we're missing here. And the other piece is you were talking about like creating individual rooms for rent, but the focus is not on the room. The focus is on the person. And what does a resident looking for housing need? Or who's looking to save money, right? Because they have their own financial goals that they want to get to, the renters on our platform. And like, how do you align the incentives from all these different players? I think is really the key piece of it. And just thinking about like, for somebody who is looking for a property, like there's a reason why they're looking for that property, and in most cases it's because they want a higher return, or they want to build some nest egg for their future self. And like the only thing that we really do is demonstrate how this model can earn 2x more income than if they were going to rent it traditionally, or if they were going to live in it. Like there's probably nothing there. But the only reason it grows and everyone starts to do it is if there's some financial motivator. Because like what I have seen for the thousands of hosts that we've had on the platform is like people they will come for the income, right? If you lead with, do you want to live with a stranger in your home? Most people in America are going to say absolutely not. But if you lead with, do you want to make more money? Most people say, sure, show me how to do that. And
how come you don't say to them, well, you all live with Alexa, so you have a stranger in your home already?
Yeah, fair point. Hopefully you didn't say that too loud that she heard you, Matt.
Yeah, she probably heard me. I'll be getting advertisements for Pad Split later.
But yeah, like I think it's all you got to lead with the right question, and then the trend is already happening. But the trend is happening, and I don't know, maybe it has something to do with our ads and getting on your Alexa. But I feel like more likely is the affordability problem's gotten worse, and
100%. Yeah. I mean, like if you have a house, let's just say you're buying one house, 4 bedrooms, and like the market supports $3,000 a month to rent out that house, but it has 4 bedrooms and you could get, $1,000 a month per bedroom. I'm just throwing out numbers. Now you're making an extra $1,000 a month on that same house, but you've opened up that house to a whole audience of people for whom $3,000 was not an option. They just needed 1 room and a kitchen and a bathroom, and 1,000's like right in the strike zone with what it is that they're making for a wage, and it fits where they're at a time in life. It's kind of like a double benefit. Like the investor or whoever it is that owns the asset is making more, but they're returning a bigger social benefit than they might have been able to because they're serving a broader audience of people. Then it just falls down to like, can that person, I don't want to say it's like rice and beans for that situation because it's not, but can somebody like sacrifice and be in a less private environment because they have a nice, clean, safe roof over their head while they work and build toward whatever it is that they want. And maybe for some people, that's where they want to be, and that's okay. We stigmatize the crap out of these solutions all the time. Like, that doesn't fit in the box of what I know, so there's got to be something wrong. I mean, I had clients that came here from the West Coast here in Maine, bought a house, and I'm like, what's your plan? They're like, we're going to rent out rooms. And I'll be honest, this was like 10 years ago. The lady worked at Google, she's familiar with the tech scene and people sharing rooms. And then here I am in Maine, like, that's nuts. People don't do that unless they're in a rooming house in a specific place, which is thought of as being negative. And they've been going off the charts with this asset that they bought here, obviously, and it's full. They don't have your service. I'm sure actually they would love it because they deal with like Timmy sold my peanut butter stuff that is probably annoying for most operators. But like, they're providing housing for wait staff in downtown Hollowell at like $650 a room per month, and they're making great return on that building.
And I mean, I hear it all the time. Like, I would never live like that. Well, good news, you don't have to. Right? Like,
right.
Maybe that's a sign it's not for you.
Good news is 350 million people here, and some of them do like that.
But I mean, like, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is just like you trust people with agency over their own decisions, and inevitably, like, if you're walking around in their shoes, you probably make the same decision. But people make decisions for all sorts of reasons, and in a lot of cases, yes, they want to save money because they want to go back to school, they want to start a business, they want to get their own place eventually, and they need to save up for a deposit. Like, they want to buy a house, like whatever. There are all sorts of different things and reasons why both members and hosts use this service and are attracted to the option. And I think whether we're talking about policymakers or just the general public, we shouldn't expect that everybody wants the exact same thing. The bigger thing that we all need to realize is, look, I think we all acknowledge there's this affordability problem, and everyone talks about housing supply or the lack of housing supply as the primary reason behind the crisis. Well, guess what? We don't actually have a supply problem, at least not in the way that most.
Yeah, how many like empty bedrooms or units or what's categorized just spaces?
So you brought up like 1950 earlier, right? In the 950 square foot home. Okay, so if you take just the total square footage of housing in the United States in 1950 and you divide it by the total U.S. population in 1950, you get a per capita housing square footage number. Okay, and every man, woman, child in 1950 used on average 299 square feet per person. Okay, that number today is about 975. Wow. So like,
jeez. It's because we get all the cheap shit from China. We got to put somewhere.
But houses have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and families have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And so we talk about the shortage of supply, but really it's not a shortage as much as it is an allocation problem. And I quoted this at the conference: like, if you just had 300 square feet per person, and let's think about 300 square feet for a second, okay? So 300 square feet is enough to hold a bedroom, like a normal size, really reasonable size bedroom is like 150 square feet. Okay, normal bathroom is between 35 and 50 square feet. A closet's like 20 square feet. Then you know what? Let's throw a kitchen in there at 100 square feet. You're still under 300 square feet. And like, if you just use that 300 square feet per person allocation, and you say, okay, well, the most conservative estimate of our housing shortage is 7.3 million households. Well, guess what? Like, within the existing square footage of housing in the United States today, you could solve your entire problem with less than 1%. Like, less than 1% of housing, and you're done overnight. And so, like, whether or not you want to live like this, or you think anyone would want to live like this, like, you've got to acknowledge the math that this is by far the fastest and most cost-efficient way to address the problem. And so then it's like, how do you play with the incentives?
It must be annoying when you tell people 1 + 1 = 2, and someone tries to argue with you about it. Like, this is not a supply problem; it's a demand from like the perspective of what it is we think we want. Or then this leads into the next thing I wanted to talk with you about, which is the regulatory environment. Like if I buy a big 3,000 square foot, 7-bed, 3.5 bath home, sounds like it would be a great candidate for pad split. People would actually have more than 300 square feet to themselves. Like you can't just do this everywhere all the time without any issues, or can you?
So it's a great question. So like pad split, like part of our values, like we've kind of created a legal strategy that enables us to operate in almost every jurisdiction in America. But that is in spite of a number of hurdles. And the biggest hurdle that we try to overcome early on was the definition of family. I think a lot of people don't realize that zoning is actually not really about safety in a lot of yeah,
No,
exactly.
it's about segregation.
And including the definition of family, which is on a local basis. So here I live in Atlanta again, and like within the 5 core county area, we have like 83 different jurisdictions, and each one of those jurisdictions has their own definition of family and how many unrelated people are allowed to live together, or like one even excludes grandparents from the definition of family or grandkids. And then some, and this is true even in Maine and upstate New York as well, where like domestic servants are counted as members of the family, but no more than 2 unrelated people. Like if you have more than that, like they can't be counted. And so like all sorts of crazy definitions that ultimately restrict our ability to use the square footage that is literally built for housing. And so we tackle that just through our strategy. I mean, we create kind of a leasehold entity for each of these homes, but in most cases, when we have to fight those types of regulations, we fight on constitutional and fair housing grounds, and we continue to fight those cases to this day. But typically we win. I mean, right? I mean, freedom of association is protected under the First Amendment. You've got the Equal Protections Clause, which is usually the one that we talk about most between the Fifth and 14th Amendment. And it seems crazy to me that like you would have these definitions that regulate occupancy without any health safety concern whatsoever, right? You could have a 1-person or 2-person household with an unlimited number of domestic servants living in the exact same house, that if you have 3 unrelated people, you're illegal. Like that just doesn't pass the smell test under any scenario. And yeah, we're playing whack-a-mole in a lot of them.
And it'd be one thing if it was like the same everywhere, but it's this patchwork of different things, even within the same jurisdictions, across different zones within the same municipality. So if somebody's working with you, like, and they're like, "Hey, Atticus, I've got this 4-bedroom house and I want to put it on pad split," and you're like, "Great, we'll take you on as a client." Like, let's say there is a legal issue. Are they covered under working with you, or they have to like defend themselves separately? How does that work?
So there's kind of like a now, next, later situation. So today we have in-house legal that can help support, right? We can't represent those individuals, but we can provide $2,500 in coverage for legal fees. And then we'll usually educate and work with their local attorneys to make sure that they understand the correct issues to bring up in those specific cases. But the reality is, like, across all of our units, those citations are only come up in like 0.4% of all of them. So
it's probably minimal. That's what I wanted to try to talk about, because I don't want people to think that they're going to open themselves up to. I mean,
the reality is, like, spitting on the sidewalk is illegal in most jurisdictions too, right? I've never seen anybody arrested for it. I think the important thing to recognize is, like, it starts with operations. And if your neighbors don't have a reason to complain, they're like, nobody's prone to complain without a reason, or at least few people. Right. Like, they certainly happen in approximately 0.4% of the time. But yeah, it's it's pretty rare. And if your grass is cut and your house looks nice and everyone's quiet, and like we don't really have a party house type of issue at all. It's just not really a thing that happens. But most of them are operated well, and they just don't have issues.
Well, I'm really just my gears are spinning because when we met and even in thinking about it, I was just like not thinking through the lens of using this as an investor or to the audience who are listening. I think a lot of times people are like, all right, this would only be work for me if I want to rent out an extra room at my house or whatever, which it could for sure. But perhaps to people who are listening that are like, gosh, I'm trying to figure out how to get something to pencil out. Maybe I should just build like a 6-bedroom, 2 or 3 bath house. And maybe in my design, I put 2 kitchens instead of 1, which would be odd for a traditional single family. But since I'm going to like set up this, are there people that are actually building this model at all? Have you seen any of that going on?
Like, I mean, I've built a number of houses here in Atlanta. We've got a couple builders in Florida. There's a big one in Houston. There are several in New Orleans. So yeah, there are people building all over that are like specific to this model. Usually more bathrooms than might be typical. Because like the room is really the new apartment, and I mean if you can live close to your place of work or close to the amenities that you're looking for, and have your own private bathroom and your own like nice bedroom, and still be in a nice neighborhood, like a lot of people think, oh, okay, well that's a little bit different, and so we see all types of clientele. I mean, we focus on the kind of the frontline workers, but like increasingly more and more retirees. Like I have a number of properties that are 55 plus, but also like traveling nurses, pilots, CEOs. Like we're seeing lots and lots more use cases as well for people who are like, yeah, I would absolutely do that in the right circumstances.
Are they generally offering furniture in these spaces?
All of our units are fully furnished,
mostly.
All utilities included. So that's a key part of the offering.
And this is different from something like Furnish Finder as an example, because you guys are doing a deeper dive on people. You're actually working to help place them in these, and then you're also doing ongoing like quasi-management.
So we actually have a partnership with Furnish Finder where we list a number of our units on Furnish Finder specifically, but they're really more of a listing aggregator. I mean, not dissimilar from like a Zillow or a Spare Room, or there are several of them. And we're much more in depth than those types of groups.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this early on where you really come alongside the people as a partner in this endeavor because you want the recurring, hey, someone left, someone new coming in. This just keeps building up your ongoing business. As opposed to like one transaction, we might fill a unit with Furnish Finder and the next one we're filling it with like an ad on Craigslist. It's
and that's hoc. I mean, there are a lot of people who think, oh, well, pad split's too expensive, right? Because our fees are, if we place the resident, we take the first 10 days of that stay, and then we charge 8% of recurring revenue. But on the other hand, we're spending a ridiculous amount of marketing dollars on the front end, and we only get paid if you get paid. And if you move in your own person, like, I don't know, maybe you posted your own ad at the Walmart break room, or you moved in your cousin or whatever, like we don't get paid that 10 days. We only get paid on the recurring revenue when they actually make payments, which we're also trying to track down and ensure that they pay. But a lot of people think, okay, well that's still really expensive. I can't figure out how to make that pencil out. And the response is, how much is your time worth? Like what is you tell me your hourly rate, and then the cost of the vacancy of that room, and what you realize pretty quickly is, oh gosh, that's a deal. When it takes, I mean, even if it takes you 30 days to fill the room, and it takes us between 2 and 8, like that's a significant differential. And if your cost of that room or your opportunity cost is on the order of $30 to $40, that adds up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I would imagine too, for people for whom are going to build a business model around this approach, that when you go to a lender, a commercial broker, a bank rather, or more traditional, I'm thinking, not a private money lender, and you're like, hey, we're working with this organization that has placements in this time
Mhm.
frame. We're going to have like no vacancy. That's probably easier to get the actual financing on that asset if you're using the income from the asset to
Yeah,
qualify.
I mean, certainly
financing.
has been in my
Um,
experience.
yeah. Do you guys also line up like contractors to do work and stuff, or would
No, I
that
mean
be more separate
like
management?
the ecosystem has to exist. So we certainly
Mhm.
engage with a number of contractors, real estate agents, insurance companies, and so forth, even lenders as well. But we don't specifically offer any of those services only because again we focus on the things that nobody else can do or we think nobody else can do well and where we can really create a lot of leverage.
Yeah, I love it. So we talked a little bit about with zoning, being a barrier for sure. Are there any other like policy barriers that come to mind for you? Particularly as we're moving toward the end of this episode, I'm always interested in ways in which you think people, and people that listen to this are probably more
Yeah.
interested than most in what they could do to affect change.
Yeah,
I'm just curious
so
what you think
the
about that.
definition of family is the biggest one. I would encourage anybody go to Municode or just go on whatever your favorite AI chatbot is and ask what is the definition of family in my hometown. And I
Uh-huh.
suspect a lot of people would be surprised with with what that is. And
Uh,
if you are and you want it to change, I would encourage you to reach out to your elected officials, certainly on the local and state levels. And then the other one on the policy side is like how this income is created. I love what you had said earlier about that person paying you rent is like your job, right? Or it's an extra job,
mhm.
and it's absolutely the right way to think about it. But uh, the way that housing policy is currently set up is really discounts that income, and in some cases doesn't count it at all.
Uh,
So one of the things I'm working on
uh,
right now with FHA and Fannie and Freddie is that well everybody counts accessory dwelling unit income, and they will even count forward looking ADU income for a new home buyer where they'll take like 75%, for instance, of the market rent of that accessory dwelling unit, and you can use that as help when they're underwriting your income. But there's no
uh,
such credit for room rental income. And obviously a lot more people have
uh,
rooms that they could potentially rent and I think would be interested in doing so. And even if you put a discount on that income, like if someone wants to buy that house and they're committing to renting out the individual unit, whether it's like I'm in kind of a basement unit here that I actually rented out on Pad Split, or if it's just the second bedroom of a two bedroom house, like there still should absolutely be a way to credit that income, and there are plenty of sources, Pad Split being one of them. But again, Zillow, Furnish Finder, like all sorts of different sources of the rental rates, and there are fair market rents set by HUD every year for SROs. So it shouldn't be that hard for people to wrap their heads around. I say that, I mean, there was a quote that like or a stat that 23% of American households had border income in 1901. 23%. Uh, and so like this
really?
is not a new concept, but I mean people have done it
Right.
literally for centuries. And
The only thing that sucks about being born later is there's less novel ideas.
it's yeah, it's fair. It's fair. But yeah, we need so we need more lenders and GSEs and FHA to recognize that okay, like yeah, this should count similar to other income.
The irony is in 1921 or
1901.
whatever year you said it was, there wasn't, 1901, like Euclid, decision in
Yeah,
zoning hadn't even happened
it's a
yet.
great point.
And this whole patchwork of all of what we just talked about, like, so yeah, we have more technology at our fingertips, and it's almost like we're being forced to do more, jumping over more bars because we know more. And it's like supposed to be to keep people safe and all these kinds of things. And yet we have exploding unhoused population, people living on the streets, walking by literal buildings with rooms that they could be in if the government would give them permission to go in and dwell there.
Yeah.
It's just like, it makes my head explode. But I love talking with people that are actually working to solve the problem. It's not like you and I are in this conversation just complaining about the way the world is. And you have an organization that's actually solving the problem in its own way. There's no silver bullets, only silver buckshot. Like, we got to do a lot of different things. But if the laws are like, you can't do this, then innovation can't go forward because it's quote unquote illegal, even though it's not.
I actually think it'll happen anyway. It'll just be in the shadows. I mean, you look at New York as an example. Yeah. I just posted on LinkedIn about this. It's like they have the strictest housing regulations in the country, but they basically have to ignore the tens of thousands of squalid, illegal basement units across the 5 boroughs, because if they actually crack down on all those, they wouldn't have a workforce. And like, who wins? Who wins in that scenario? Like, no one.
Right.
But
I agree with you completely, and I'm thrilled that you're really working to crack this nut, not just sitting in some ivory tower, but getting out and working on policy. And obviously, it benefits the organization, but it benefits humanity to make these changes. And I think a lot of times I struggle with getting other CEOs to like show up to the policy discussions, which really move the needle drastically. Because like you said, a lot of these things are not novel. It's just that now it's been made illegal, and we got to like make it so that we can do that again. Because before all the regulations, it worked. We're more people, we grew. We got to get to the bottom line. Like, what can they afford per month? And if they're not on a housing choice voucher, or there's not a unit available that will take one, like, where's the unsubsidized option that gets them in a safe environment? This is a huge win on that front.
Well, yeah, appreciate it, and yeah, I'm always happy to share what I've learned, and hopefully it benefits somebody else.
Well, 100%. I mean, I'm already thinking about like the 4 or 5 people that I can reach out to and say, hey, look, you've been thinking about getting into investing in real estate. Have you considered a room rental option? And if they say, well, I don't feel like dealing with placing people, no problem. There's a group that can do that for you in 8 days or less. They'll fill it right up. Looking ahead, just in terms of where we're going, what are ways in which people can learn more about PadSplit and how they could maybe follow with what you're doing?
So check us out at www.padsplit.com. And then if you're interested in hosting or renting a room, just follow the particular links. If you're following me, I'm typically posting on LinkedIn. I don't have too much time for other social media.
Same. LinkedIn, it's like the cocktail reception. Yeah, we can get a lot done. Atticus, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And thank you also really for putting your life's work into getting roofs over people's heads, man. It's just such an important endeavor, and really thank you.
Well, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.